Okay, so I guess trauma is pretty common in New York, huh? Okay, so my specialty is I have a drug rehab facility in Miami. I also have a detox that I'm opening up in a week. And this is something that's very close to me. We just opened up a trauma center in our rehab facility because when I was basically dealing with the clients, I realized that over 95% of all addictions had to do with trauma. So not 10%, 90% of all addictions had to do with trauma. So I said, you know, we have to talk about this more. I guess sometimes the rabbis are not talking about it enough, but I said it's my job to talk about this. So there's no other specialty than Rabbi Nachman to talk about trauma and how to get up. We know Times Magazine says who are the strongest people today are the people that are most resilient. In order to have any kind of success in our lives, we have to be able to think greater than a person can figure, because without that, how's he have the emunah? So we have to think greater than we feel. It's very, very important. Many people, they can't get out of their situations because they can't think greater than they feel. The only way to think greater than you feel is through faith. There's no other way. There's no other recipe out there. That means I have to believe in a better tomorrow. I have to believe that there's a better meaning. So that's what we're going to go speak about today. So again, resilience is the key. Rav Nachman had a beautiful Torah, and he says one time there were two men walking, and all of a sudden the house was completely burnt on the ground. And they said, look at that guy. What is he doing picking up the scraps in this house? What is he doing picking up the scraps? He's wasting his time. He says that's exactly what we need to do. Everybody's going to have a situation in their lives that their house got burned down. God forbid, not a house, a divorce, failures, etc. Our job is not to say why me, but to say what's next. That's the key to this class today. Not why me, but what's next. We're about to approach Rosh Hashanah. The ultimate key in Rosh Hashanah is we're literally saying to God, you are the king of the world. I'm here to crown you. How can I crown the king if I think I was dealt a bad hand? So it's a big problem, because you're saying something with your heart, and next thing you say, God is great, God is everything, and you walk out of there, you complain about how miserable your life is. So there's a disconnect there. That's why it's so important to have kavanah. So remember, Rosh Hashanah, we're there to crown the king. We're there to tell God, look how great you are in my life. That's the whole purpose of Rosh Hashanah, to show the greatness of God. So we have to make sure that we are in line to that. That's the number one thing. Remember, have I demonstrated in the past year that God is great? For example, can I pray? I'm praying for a better year with the same attitude that I had last year. God, please give me a better year. I have to pray for a better me. The only way for a person to crown the king is to have gratitude. The only way to have gratitude is to have the right perception. Because if I don't have the right perception in life, I can't crown the king. If I can't crown the king, then I got a big problem. Then everything else is a result of that. So if I don't feel that Hashem loves me, a person doesn't love himself, he's going to end up losing himself. And this is where we have such problems with addictions, because if you don't love yourself, you're not going to put an effort for yourself. So what we try to do is we try to get people to start loving themselves by looking at their failures. I myself was divorced. I myself failed 1,000 times. And you could see people when I introduce them to dating. Oh, she's divorced? Something must be wrong with her. I said, you're asking me to set you up, and I was the one that was divorced. So we all have, this is part of life. But we judge people so quickly today. We're in such a judgmental box world today. And we have to realize the fact that maybe they were divorced, they have more experience than you. They have a bachelor's in communications now. So it's not the worst thing in the world. So we definitely have to stop the judgment. The judgment is terrible. We have to understand that the key to our happiness is growing and giving in our life. Whether we grow and give is the ultimate key to our happiness. If I am stuck in trauma my whole life, I'm going to give you tools today to get out of trauma. But if I'm stuck in trauma my whole life, I can't be a giver. I can't be a giver because it's all about me. And I can't, that's the problem with the story. It protects you, but it imprisons you too. So many times, like I said, I try to set people up with people. Hey, try this business. I'm afraid I'm going to fail. But if you have the same thinking as before, you're going to have the same actions, and you're going to have the same results. So the only real key to change is to have new thinking. And the only way to have new thinking is to have new information. That's the only way. Rav Nachman clearly said in Lesson 250, that he says in Lesson 250 that all our problems, any suffering that we have today, it's due to perception. It's due to perception. The number one job of the ego is to block perception. Is to block it. So you're not open-minded. And that's the problem. If a person's not open-minded, what is he going to do? He's going to blame other people. So this is the key, and this is where I've realized in my life, the major changes that I made in my life is literally accepting. Knowing there's a there's purpose in this world. Knowing there's a bigger why. And knowing that Hashem is cannot give me something I can't handle. That's the number one core belief you have to have. That God does not give anybody anything they can't handle. And the second core belief you need to have is God created the world to give. If those are your core beliefs, then anytime you have any kind of challenge, it should be a challenge, it shouldn't be trauma. Again, maybe I'm sounding a little insensitive, but I went through the worst things in my life, and it's only when I had better thinking, when I had bigger perception, when I accepted, is when I saw major changes. Why? Because when you accept, what are you doing? You're showing God is the king. There's a much bigger why. So that's the number one thing you guys have to understand. If God created the world in order to love, and God does not give anybody something he can't handle, then what do we need to do next? We need to approach life, not avoid life. And I see 23-year-old kids trying to kill themselves in rehab, Jewish, non-Jewish, and at the end of the day, it's a broken perception of life. So that's why these classes that we do them daily to teach people not why the addiction, but why the pain. What are you running away from? What are you running away from? Oh, you had a failure in this? Welcome to life. You had a bad childhood? Welcome to life. Let's transform it. Remember, evil does exist in the world. But our job is not to understand it, our job is to transform it. Our job is to find the light by looking at the Nikudat Tovah, by looking at the good points in our life. So it's very, very important. Because the problem is, the opposite of emunah is doubt. If doubt is a constant emotion that a person has, he's never going to take any action in his life. He's never going to take anything in his life. He's always going to stay in doubt. I don't want to try this because maybe I'm going to fail. I don't want to try this. And what happens is, little by little, all we're doing is we're going into growth. We're going into comfort instead of going into growth. So every single move we make, either we're going into comfort or we're going into growth. So that's the only way, and we have to understand. Growth is non-negotiable. You can't negotiate growth. It's non-negotiable. Sometimes it's going to come through pain. Sometimes it's going to come from inspiration or desperation. But you have to grow. Without growing, a person doesn't have meaning. Viktor Frankl said it best. When a person has no meaning in his life, there's where the rest of the distractions are there. So we have to, it's such an important thing. So again, who was the first case of post-traumatic stress? And this is the story of our lives. Noah. What happened to him? He didn't properly do the mission correctly. So what happened? He saw that the world was destroyed. Instead of rebuilding, he got drunk. Remember, an addiction is an attempt to solve a problem. He wanted to be out of his head. We all have addictions. What are they doing? They're an attempt to solve a problem. I don't want to be in my head. I want to be out of my head. So technically in addiction, people want peace of mind. But they realize that they can't get it that way. So again, an addiction is an attempt to solve a problem. We have to understand that. So we have to ask ourselves, not why the addiction, but what am I running away from? What am I running away from? If every failure in my life is to build a new vessel, then how am I approaching failure? How am I doing this? And this is what happened to Noah. He got drunk, and the rest is history. The rest is history. So the way Hashem wants us to deal with our problems is basically to find the Nikudat Tovah, find the light in it. I'm going to give you specific instructions to do that. It's not so easy, because the problem is it's the emotions that are running the show, not the mind. And that's what we have to separate. That's the one thing. So again, the key to really know if a person has bitachon in Hashem is whether or not he takes action. I said it many times. I had a horrendous divorce. I got married 30 to 40 days later. Because the key is to get back up right away. It's not to say, oh, I had a horrible divorce. I'm never going to get married again. I'm traumatized. That's not showing God is the king. Or, I failed in business. I'm never going to do this business again. Or, I'm never going to do that again. That's, you're basically cutting the source of your life. You're cutting the source of your life. And then what happens is we stay in Mochim Kadnut. The only way to really get mercy from Hashem is to trust. We have to take the first step. And then Hashem shows the person trust, then he gives the mercy. So again, why is the world created that way? Because the world was created so the person should make the lower arousal. I have to make the move, and upstairs they make the move. Which is, otherwise it would be too easy. You'd have open miracles. So that's the way God created the world. So remember, God does not give a person something he cannot handle. Remember that line, because if you don't remember that line, the rest you're going to think, oh my God, it's too much, I can't believe it, I'm the only one with the problem. If you don't have that line down packed, already you're not going to be able to have courage to move on to the new marriage, to move on to the new business, to move on from the, God forbid, assault that a person had. So again, it's not our conditions that decide our life, it's our decisions. We have a decision. Decision can change your life. The minute I said, you know what, Hashem, I'm going to accept, my life changed. The minute I started doing his bodhidut, my life changed. The minute I got rid of a couple gross numbers that I shouldn't have, my life changed. All of these things, 1 minute decisions can change your life. 1 minute decisions. It's not, don't think it's a big deal, but you have to take actions. And a billionaire and a beggar has 24 hours. So basically our life comes down to our decisions. What are we deciding on? Whether you wake up, whether you go to sleep, whether you help, whether you don't. These are all decisions. Whether you take growth or you take comfort. They're all decisions you're making constantly. Now, the only way to have a new, we go back to this concept that it's very, very important that a person has to think greater than how he feels. If you can't get past that, then what are we doing? We're just replaying the same story, and next thing you know, what happens? We're stuck in that story. We're stuck in a cycle of a story. We're stuck in a limited belief, which is the complete opposite of what Hashem says, that He creates the world brand new every day. So if God's telling you He's created the world brand new every day, and you're stuck in the same story, then there's the emunah. There's the suffering from the emunah. That's what Rabbi Nachman says, that all suffering today, it's due to a lack of faith. Bottom line, mental, spiritual, etc. Unless you have faith, you can never see it better. You can never have a new thought, and you're stuck in the same patterns. So it's very, very, very important that we have new thinking. New thinking means Hashem is kind. He created the world to give. Now, we're going to talk about the Tzimtzum concept. We're going to talk about everything else. But that has to be our core belief. And we have to understand, every single time I have a situation in my life, in any business, did we win or did we learn? There's no such thing as I failed, I'm a failure, I failed again, I'm worthless. Did you win or did you learn? That should be the only question. Not why me, but what's next? Did I win or did I learn? I hate to sound so simple, by the way. It sounds super simple. Did I win or did I learn? But how easy and soft and comforting is that? Instead of trying to figure out something that you're never going to be able to figure out. Rav Nachman's even going to tell us that the only way you're going to ever figure out something is by humility and bittul. There's a concept of na'aseh v'nishma. What's na'aseh v'nishma? We will accept what we will do. And this is a concept. That means first, there's darkness, and then there's light. This is the world of creation. It hasn't changed. There has to be darkness before light. There has to be chaos before light. That's the story. In every single path that I've hung in my life, what's literally due to that. Being able to be resilient in that. So we know that Elul, we're constantly our main purpose in Elul, Rav Nachman speaks about, is doing teshuvah on the teshuvah. What does that mean, doing teshuvah on the teshuvah? That means I have to constantly grow in my intellect so much that according to yesterday's intellect that I had, I should be embarrassed of how I thought about the world, how I thought about Hashem. That's the way you have to grow. This way it never gets stale. When a person doesn't grow, and doesn't listen to classes, and doesn't have the proper perception, then he can never do teshuvah properly. Because what are you doing teshuvah on? You don't have a new perception. So the whole point is, according to the perception that I had a year ago, and the perception that I have today, I'm embarrassed about the way I was thinking. I'm literally embarrassed. That itself is an embarrassment. That itself is how you do proper teshuvah. To recognize how low you were in front of Hashem. And this is a constant process. So what happens is people they're not getting the new perception, so they say, what should I do teshuvah for? Why should I be grateful to Hashem? Look what he did to me. So it's very important. We speak about the concept of a tzimtzum a lot. This concept of a tzimtzum. In order for God to create the world, I like to work on fundamentals. In order for God to create the world, He had so much light in the world, and in order for Him to be a king, He had to condense His light to us. From that condensing came the vacated space, and then came the shattered vessels. The shattered vessels is the source of all our failures in our lives, what Nachman speaks about. Now, why does God have to have a tzimtzum? Because if there wasn't a tzimtzum, there wouldn't be free choice. There wouldn't be free choice. The ultimate reward for a person today is based on his free choice. Whether he says yes or whether he says no. It's up to us. We make that decision. I know I had, again, going back to the decisions. It's that tzimtzum. What does the tzimtzum mean? Tzimtzum means it appears like God is completely out of the picture. So a person, this is where most of trauma comes from. The first question they ask is, how could God allow this to happen to me? How could it be possible that this should have happened to me? This is exactly what happened to the Jews in Egypt. What was the problem with the Jews in Egypt? First, there was the slavery. They were crying out, where's God? Where's God? How could He let Pharaoh destroy us and make us slaves? That's the tzimtzum in your life. The ultimate despair. The ultimate, I can't believe this has happened to me. The shvirat kelim, the vessels breaking, was the slavery itself. And what's the rectification? The tikkun. What are we doing every Passover? We're celebrating the trauma, and now we're kings. That mirrors your life. You have that same trauma in your life, and you're supposed to transform that trauma and sit like a king at the end of the day and crown Hashem. That's exactly what's happening. Every single Passover, you're sitting like a king, you're sitting in royalty, you're drinking. It's called post-traumatic growth, not post-traumatic stress. See, if you don't have emunah, you're going to have post-traumatic stress. If you have emunah, you have post-traumatic growth. God, a person's not supposed to be created to have post-traumatic stress. He's supposed to be created to have post-traumatic growth. What were the two issues? What were the two issues that stopped the Jews from getting out of Egypt? Why did 80% prefer to be in a slave mentality? Lack of desire. They didn't want to get out. They'd rather be slaves. That means if you don't have a big why, you're going to be a slave to your emotions. And the last one was faith. Did they believe? Did they think higher than what they are? Did they believe they were going to get out? They got out. And the whole purpose of the Exodus in Egypt was for one purpose: to test you. To test you. See, the good thing about Hasidut, why I love Rav Nachman's stories and the Baal Shem Tov and Chabad's, is because it focuses on the present. Okay? The problem is to get you closer to God. Other psychiatry just talks about the past and the past. Oh, it's because your mother, because your uncle, because of this, childhood, etc. Okay, we get the past, but where's the meaning? Where do we press go? Otherwise, we just talk about the past, and we sit in shame, and we sit in guilt, and we sit in these negative emotions that all make us feel terrible. So Hasidut believes that the purpose of a descent is for an ascent. Anytime you fall, it's only to prepare you for the rise. Again, why do we have to have so many ups and downs? It's because if you didn't have the ups and downs, you would be very arrogant, and you would forget about Hashem. Only when we have these ups and downs do we have to throw and rely only on Hashem. So this is something that I'm trying to explain to people, that there's no other solution. So the ups and downs in our lives is exactly the mirror of creation. The Zohar says very clearly, man is a miniature world. So you're going to have a darkness, you're going to have a light, etc. The difference is, after chaos, there's light. But some people don't see the light unless they start accepting. It's very, very important. Acceptance is the ultimate level of humility. Shlomo HaMelech, which was the wisest person in the world, says, one who hates gifts lives. What are you talking about, one who hates gifts lives? Doesn't make any sense. It's exactly that. Because God's ultimate, our ultimate purpose is to imitate God and become givers. What happens if I can't give because I'm stuck in my problems? Then what happens? I'm not imitating God. And I can't give. Then I have to take gifts from everybody else. And then I'm not living my mission. I can't see my purpose. I don't know tomorrow. I'm too involved in the injustice in this world. Can I really say to a person when he's standing in front of Rosh Hashanah, God, you are the king of the world? And he says, what are you talking about, king of the world? I can't pay this. This is horrible. That's horrible. That's horrible. So what happens? He looks to the Siddur, 10 minutes, happy Rosh Hashanah. He doesn't feel, oh my God, I'm talking to the king of the world. There is the king of the world. My job is to crown him. So you have 30 days. You have 30 days to fix all the messes in the past and say, where in my life am I not crowning the king? Ask yourself, where am I not crowning him? Am I complaining too much about my wife? Am I complaining too much about work? Basically, a complaint is you're basically telling Hashem, I'm not happy with what I have. So not only do you not get the abundance and the mercy, but you get shown, okay, let me show you something else to complain about. This is the problem. Without gratitude, we don't accept God's kingship. So I've changed people only with one thing. Just changing from the expectation to appreciation. The minute you change from expectation to appreciation, you have a shift in all of a sudden complete lack of kingship to crowning Hashem. It doesn't, again, these things don't take much. But yeah, you have to be careful what you're thinking about. Because if you're not careful what you're thinking about, we're only upset because of our expectations. And at the end of the day, when we have problems, what happens? We go down with them. As there's a famous line, don't go down with your problems. So these are major things before Rosh Hashanah. I have to figure out how in the world I'm going to feel it. That means thoughts are the language of the mind, feelings are the language of the body. Remember, those two have to be connected. If my mind is thinking something else, and my body is completely thinking something else, I don't feel the abundance, I don't feel the kingship, I feel a lack, I feel a disconnect. If you're having a hard time thanking Hashem, finding Hashem, then what do we need to do? We need to go back to perception. Like I said before, a 5-year-old only cares about his broken toy. His perception is limited to that. Until he realizes, oh my God, I have a beautiful house. I have this, I have that. He gets stuck in that situation. Okay, it's very, very, very important. And we have to understand, in order for me to make proper tshuva, I have to work on my perception so much that every single day I should see. And this is the same thing with the relationship. Why do relationships get old? Because they're not renewed. Anything you don't renew, anything you become casual with, you will become a casualty to. Anything. Exercise, relationships, business, across the board, health. If you're casual with it, you will become a casualty with it. It's very, very important. We're not meant to be casual. We're not meant to be defeated. We're supposed to be the ones that are giving light to everybody else. That's the purpose. We should have non-Jews saying, where could I convert? Where is the first place where I convert? It's not happening today. It's not happening. Opposite. You're having 90%, 67% into marriage. Not only they're not asking where we can convert, they're asking where can we get out. can we get out? Why is spirituality become such a heavy thing? Because there's no relationship. That's the problem. You go to a synagogue, they give you a book, here, read this, bye-bye. This guy's upset, that guy's upset, he doesn't talk to that guy, that doesn't talk. Where's the heart? Where's the heart? Nobody's talking to anybody, everybody's fighting with everybody, and at the end of the day, we're the chosen nation. So that's something I should, am I influencing people? Am I giving energy away? Or am I sucking energy away? That's another question we have to ask. So again, when a person has light on his face, he's able to give to others. Otherwise, God forbid, when we're walking around beaten up, it shows, look what you gave me, God. Look what you gave me. Look at the disaster in my life. That's not crowning the king. That's the opposite. That's showing injustice. That's showing that God's cruel. So what happens? A kid grows in that kind of parenting, and the kid says, I don't want to be involved with this. This is not what I want. I want to be free. And this is why you're losing so many of these kids. And I'm trying to get them back on waivers. But this is why you're losing so many people, because they don't see the godliness, they don't see the freshness, they don't see the renewal. And this is exactly what Elul is all about. So first thing, Rosh Hashanah, get your perception. Think about the past. Look, question everything. Question your thinking. Don't question Hashem. Question your thinking. So let's talk about a little bit about lesson 65. So back to this, Rav Nachman says that the ultimate way that we're ever going to get, one second. The ultimate way we are ever going to see beyond the problem, and we have to realize the reason for the problem, is because Hashem took our awareness away. If a person cannot see past 10 yards, it's because Hashem takes his awareness away from him. Hold on a second, give me 1 second. This kid. 1 second. Lesson 65, Rav Nachman says, in truth, there is no evil whatsoever. Everything is only good. The pain a person experiences in this world and the suffering he goes through is because Hashem took his awareness away from him. One of the things that we need to do, instead of repeating the same story over and over, we need to ask Hashem, open up my eyes. Open up my eyes. We gave the example of Hagar. Hagar was stuck in the middle of the desert. She was crying out. Her child was about to die. What did she do? She cried out to God. You know what God did? He opened up her eyes. The well was there the whole time. The fountain was there the whole time. But what happened? She didn't see it. What did God do? He opened up her eyes. That's perception. So what happens is this is what we're asking. We're asking God, don't change the situation. I need to change. I need to change my perception. So what does he say here? God forbid, because his awareness is taken from him, he's unable to focus on the ultimate purpose, which is entirely good. When I first started doing these, I started learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings 18 years ago. Never had intentions of speaking, never had intentions of absolutely doing anything with, but I love them, I use them myself, etc. Until we opened up the Breast Center, I had a horrific trauma, and what happens is I was in the wrong lane in life. I had an insurance company, I was enjoying life, nothing, no speaking, no therapy, no rehab, none of that stuff. Only when Hashem realized that my soul doesn't belong in that profession. What did Hashem do? He flipped my life around to get me to the right lane. Now, back then in the problem, I didn't see it. I didn't realize this was all happening for me. Life was happening for me, not to me. Back then I said, why are you doing this to me? Look at the tzedakah I give. Look at all the things I give. Look at how many mitzvahs I do. I started saying how many things I do. It says, this is unfair. So what happens? I didn't feel like praying. I didn't feel like giving charity. I got in such a negative mindset of a victim because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how could this happen to me. Meanwhile, God was preparing a whole different life for me, but I was completely blind to that. So all I focused was on the short-term problems instead of, wow, if I would have just seen what was going to happen, I would smile and say, I will take the suffering happily. So guess what's happening to us? We're all going through that. Basically, our soul and our mazal is there to help you. And when you go in the wrong lane, sometimes it takes a midlife crisis to get you to the other lane. Because you're not going to learn it easily. Sometimes it takes a midlife crisis to flip your life around to get you to the right place where your soul is alive, which is ultimately kindness. But it doesn't look like kindness at all. It doesn't look like, it looks like cruelty. I always spoke to people about sneaky blessings. Sneaky blessings don't come from the front door as Girl Scout cookies. They don't come with a Girl Scout cookie telling you, would you like a blessing? No, they come from the back door, they tear down your house. Oh, here's the blessing, by the way. We don't see it. This is the way blessings are cloaked today, unfortunately, sometimes. So we all have that. How did I get to that? Only through acceptance. Only through acceptance and using this concept called bitul. We know that all of our problems come from, when we say, why me, what are we focused on? Selfish. We're focused on ani, my problem. Right? We need to go from ani to ayin. What is ayin? Humility. So anytime we're focused on the self, that's where the problem is. So we have to shift from ani to ayin. I have to walk around life with scars and say, look Hashem, if it wasn't for this scar, I wouldn't have got here. If it wasn't for this scar, I wouldn't have got here. Your scars you're supposed to be your medals. They're not supposed to be, look what this person did to me. You never pushed the emunah button. You never pushed the bittul button. You never accepted. So your scars should be your medals. A person should be walking with scars like a captain in the army. This was from this war, this is from that war, this is from that war. I'm not allowed to make jokes anymore because I got too much heat from everybody. So I got to take it easy with the jokes. But this is the way we're supposed to walk around with scars. As if it wasn't for this scar, I would have never gotten here. If it wasn't for this scar, I would have never gotten here. Any kind of therapy that you have without attaching a meaning to it is you're stuck. You might as well get a lifetime contract with a therapist. So any kind of therapy, remember, that means the purpose of these classes that we speak about, what Rabbi Nachman's teaching, is every single class has a meaning behind it. Oh, by the way, the reason why this is happening is because you're dating the wrong girl. The reason why this is happening is because there's a bigger why. So we realize that any kind of suffering that we have is literally a cleansing to prepare us for a different vessel. It's a constant process. It's a constant process of cleansing the vessel. You can see that sometimes when a person wants to see very, very far away, he can't see very far away. What does he need to do? He squints. Why do I have to squint if I want to see something very, very far away? That means something is happening for me, but right now, because of the pain and the emotions, I can't see it. So what do I need to do? Rabbi Nachman tells us we need to close our eyes. We need to close our eyes. When you close your eyes, you're already connected into a deeper, deeper purpose of why that's happening to you. But what happens if we close our eyes? We wake up with a bigger headache because I'm trying to numb something. So the first time we close our eyes, what's happening? The Yetzer Hara goes, where are you going? Look at the problem you have. Look at the intensity of the problem you have. Only by constantly getting into the state of closing our eyes, opening our eyes, closing our eyes, by the second or third time, what does Hashem do? He'll give you meaning. How do you know, Rabbi Nachman says, how do we know if we handled something the right way? How do you know? How do you know if I handled a problem the right way? Only if you have a story behind it. Only if you said, if it wasn't for this For example, any invention today that was created, even look at the top speakers, Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, they all had a tremendous amount of chaos in their life. Mel Robbins was bankrupt completely, she lost everything, and she woke up 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next thing you know, she sold 8 million books. That was the darkness that got her to that. Oprah Winfrey, same concept. Only when they were able to deal with the darkness, when they were able to go out. The Closet Rebbe, he was in the Holocaust for 2 years. What is the first thing he did? He started building. He started building. Our job is to say, what is next? Every scar is a medal. It's not there to defeat you, because we believe that God's doing it for us. So Rav Nachman says the only way to see something much greater is through dat. Now, why is the problem with it? Why is it dat? What's the first sin ever in creation? Well, it came from the sin of dat. What was Chava's main issue? She pursued pride. She pursued the ego. She went for the itzadat. She went for the intelligence. She went for the control. How do we fix it? Only through that. Because she sinned through that, she sinned through her perception, we have to only be able to rectify through our perceptions. So it's very, very important. So back to the Shvirat HaKelim concept. To go back to the way creation was created. First, there is a tzimtzum. A tzimtzum is an absence of light. That's where a person feels that there's despair. How could God do this to me? I have 3 kids. My husband went with this other person. He doesn't see God. That's the first step, right? The second step is the vacated space. That's where we have to have free will. And the third step is the Shvirat HaKelim, which is the failures of the past. And the fourth step is the tikkun. Let's give you a practical example for this thing. Let's say you're standing in a room, and all of a sudden, you see this chandelier, it breaks in 1,000 pieces. What happens? That's the Shvirat HaKelim. You're traumatized. What happens? You have a beautiful chandelier, beautiful house, it breaks right into your face. Not only does it break, but you have no light in your house, and you have thousands of pieces of glass all over the place. That's the remembering of what happened to you. Now what happens? If this person doesn't go and say, maybe Hashem wants me to put a bigger light, what happens? He stays in darkness. Not only does he have no light, but he has 1,000 pieces of glass all over his life. And every time he steps someone, he remembers what happened to him. How do you rectify this? What's the tikkun? The tikkun is to put a 50-pound chandelier. At least, I'm not telling you you're not going to have the piece of glass in the bottom of your foot. But you're going to say, well, look at the new light. If it wasn't for this piece of glass falling, I wouldn't have put the new light on. That's when you have purpose. That's when you have meaning. Then there's no suffering. That's what Viktor Frankl says. The minute there's meaning, suffering completely is over. When you don't have the meaning, you're still going to suffer. You understand? The meaning is the key. Finding meaning. If ultimately, if I could find meaning in every single thing that happened to me. For example, I had a car accident. I'm a terrible driver. And I had a situation where I had many tickets because I'm just as impatient as you guys are. So I maybe I had 3 or 4 tickets. It was like, okay, I'll pay the fine, it's a big deal. And all of a sudden, I get into a car accident. And I hit a lady in front of me, and that lady hits a lady in front of her. So what happens? Here comes this realtor of the month. She sees the car, time to get paid. So she decides to sue. I don't even know how she got hit. But all of a sudden, whoa, I gotta take my driving a little bit more seriously, because now it's costing me money. I have leverage now. All of a sudden she's suing for over the policy limits. My first thought was, I don't understand why this is happening to me. Why she didn't even get hit? It's not true. This is nonsense. Wouldn't this be the normal reaction we would all have? And then I said, there's a much deeper, and then of course I started saying, I give classes, I give charity, blah, 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 all of the things that we do to pump ourselves, that we don't deserve that. And then all of a sudden I said, if it wasn't for this accident, I would never stop being on my phone when I drive. I would start taking life. Maybe my car was supposed to flip over, God forbid. So then I started having this unbelievable amount of gratitude and saying, thank you for that small smack that you gave me. I stopped focusing on the case, and I started focusing on the gratitude that Hashem didn't flip my car around. How would I have gotten the lesson if I practically didn't have enough leverage to change? Is it gratitude? So the way I was looking at it completely shifted. So I started feeling, all of a sudden, from worrying about a case, all of a sudden I had an abundance of gratitude that Hashem saved my life. If you don't have the right perception, what are you going to do? Oh my God, what's happening? Who's she judging? Who's the court? Who's the lawyer? Who's this? Who's this? Maybe they'll take this. Maybe they'll take that. Call this attorney. Call that attorney. You miss the whole picture. It's to get you to wake up. It's to get you to wake up. It has nothing to do with her. It was so ridiculous that I didn't even hit her head on. It was another car that hit her. But if that's what Hashem wanted, that was the wake-up call. But that over a leg, that over, God forbid, a bad accident, thank God. When you look like that, you get out of a problem in 5 minutes. And you say, oh my God, I'm so grateful for you. And guess what? The case is little by little going away. Because why? Because we did tshuva. So there's no need to wake you up. The purpose of punishment is only in the absence of tshuva. That's it. What does God need punishment? The only purpose of punishment is to wake a person up to realize, hey buddy, you're going in the wrong lane. This is going to lead you to this. This is going to lead you to that. So when I looked at that case, and I'm like, it took me one day to come to that conclusion after accepting. Then I said, oh my God, you're doing it for me. And that was an unbelievable amount of... This happens to everybody. But you haven't made that conversion yet. You haven't made the conversion by saying, oh my God, you're trying to save my life. You're trying to get me to a different place in my life. You're trying to get me to the right shidduch. You're trying to do this for me, not to me. The minute I'm still in the to me, I'm still in the why me mode. I'm not going to be the hero. I'm going to be the victim to the story. And then what's going to happen? I'm going to attract other problems along with that. Because then I'm going to say, what's the purpose of praying? Look what I do. This is what happens. This is how people get into bad slumps. One leads to another, leads to another, and leads to another. And it all started with one mistaken perception where it could have became a story, etc., etc., etc. And what was the big change that I did? I started questioning my thinking instead of questioning Hashem. And there was an aha moment. Because when you start questioning your thinking and stop questioning Hashem, then you start becoming humble. And then through humility, all the answers come to a person. Once there's arrogance, there's no room for the answer. Where is there room for the answer? There's no place, because you already have a story. So there's no way a new story can come in, because that story is already related. The same thing. Hashem's waiting to give a guy who got divorced. Okay, you had a bad divorce. You learned. You didn't win. You learned. Get back and get remarried. Not go and celebrate. How many times do the Knicks celebrate after they have a bad loss? Imagine with the Knicks having a major champagne party after they get blown out all the time. You would say, you guys are crazy. Get back up the next day and figure out what you did. That's the biggest... I'm not the smartest guy in the world, believe me. But one thing I do, I recover quickly. I get the hints quickly. I'm not going to ever question, because I believe that I've seen so many miracles in my life that I would never think Hashem is doing something to me. He's doing it for me. That single line can absolutely change every single thinking you have, whether you approach life or whether you avoid life. Whether you're walking around with scars or you're walking around with medals. Whether you say, why me? Or whether you say, what's next? And then you develop risk. And then you're not afraid to take risk. You have a guy, he's afraid to take any risk because of every time he failed. What happens? He's taking the failures of his life and he's stacking them on his head and says, look, I'm worthless, look at all the failures. The failures are you're supposed to step over them, not stack it in the back. That's why most problems today, lack of self-esteem. Why do you think a Zamra is such an important lesson? But Nachman says, if there's one lesson that's so important in your life, it's a Zamra. Because if you don't sing with what you have, you're going to cry with what you don't have. You're going to cry with what's missing in your life. So it's so important, these lessons. And that's why the number one thing is you have to teach Emunah. You have religion without Emunah, you're finished. You're finished. Because you're not going to understand why things are happening. You're not going to get it. Your mind's going to be questioning everything. What's a question? Safek. Doubt. You know what guys call me? How do you know God exists? How do you know all this is for real? I said, I'm shocked that you're even thinking this way. It's like, you went to yeshiva? This is the way you think? And I came from public school, for God's sake. And how did they think? How did it get there? How did it get there? How did it get there? And I realized, very simple, there was never a relationship with Hashem. There was only a religion with the rules and this, and no relationship. There was the mind, but not the heart. What's the difference between having kavanah and not having kavanah when you pray? The mind, but not the heart. And that's what the key is. What Nachman says, if you don't have the mind and the heart alive, you're never going to feel it. You're never going to feel it, and we're walking away from the greatest pleasure. Because let's be very frank. You're never going to be able to understand evil, but you're going to be able to transform it if you believe that God is with you. You're never going to be able to understand the problem unless you humble yourself. Because through that humility, a new creation is made, which is the ultimate level of Keter. But today, the number one thing I try to get people in addiction, you have to accept. If you don't accept what happened, I can't come in and help you. Until you're fighting that acceptance, I can't come to help you. As the Kosko Rebbe says, Hashem is only where you let him in. You let him in here, wonderful. You let him in there, wonderful. So back to this concept of the shattered vessels. These shattered vessels are the failures in our life. They're built into creation. We're going to have to go through shattering vessels. We're going to have to go through failures. But the purpose of that is to rethink your strategy. It's not to harm you. It's to rethink. Rethink. Okay, Shalom Bayit's not working like this? Rethink it. Rethinking positive thinking doesn't mean positive. It means expecting obstacles. Why? Because every time I want a new light, there must be a vessel that's able to capture that light. It's just like we all have these wonderful lights to do everything. I have a light to do this, I have a light to do that. That comes from a desire. Only through patience and humility can we develop it. Just like someone that wants to lose 50 pounds. If his light is not matching his vessel, he needs to focus on losing 2 pounds. And then once he gets those 2 pounds, he builds a vessel. He can lose another 2 pounds. Otherwise, his light is not going to match his effort. So when he tries, the light will be too much, and then he says, I tried, it didn't work. No, it doesn't work like that. Think big, but act small. That means we have to focus on today. Is cut the movie. Cut the movie. Don't ask why the addiction, but ask why the pain. Oh, because of a failure? Because of a parenting? You know how many times, my story could have been, my father left me when I was 8 years old from Colombia. I could have said, maybe he left me because I'm not worthy. Maybe I wasn't worthy, I wasn't the smartest kid. That's why he left. Or I could have said, wow, I'm 8 years old, I better get to work. That was my story. But what happens is children don't have feedback. So they only get what their parents say. They can never question, oh, mommy, you had a tzimtzum today. That's why you're yelling at me. Or, mommy, you had a bad quarter in business, right? That's why you're mad. It has nothing to do with me, right? It's only because of business you're upset. You're not upset because of me, right? Children don't know the difference. So sometimes they'll have that thought their whole head, I'm unworthy because of my childhood. We have to question that. We have to say it has nothing to do with you. If a parent cannot give love out, he's not able to give it. He's not emotionally able to give it. Many times our parents were dealing with, raising families, and they weren't emotionally available to tell you how great you are. Guess what? Tough luck. So realize they weren't able to give it at that. They were overwhelmed. They had this going on. They may be single mothers. My mother was a single mother. I'm going to question, you weren't available to take me to every baseball game. Maybe you didn't like me enough. That could have been my story. And I could have been in addiction centers, numbing my emotions and why I'm worthless of a bad childhood. And guess what? My whole life would have been destroyed. Because I would have had that story tied to my whole life. So these are the stories that are costing everything. And then you got to go back and you say, why do I love myself? Let me turn that trauma into a learning, not into a failure. I learned. But when I stop blaming people, I stop this, then what happens? Then a person gets Hashem's merit. Because either if a person looks at life negative, upstairs they're looking at him the same way. So it's so important to fight for joy. And remember, we are souls, we are not thoughts. Just because you're thinking something for the past 10, 15 years, it has nothing to do with your soul. It's just a thought. And why the beginning is so difficult is because your brain is not used to a new thought. So I tell people it takes 30 to 40, sometimes 60 days to break the thinking pattern. I'm too busy. Okay, I can't help you if you can't help yourself. That means you might have to invest 30 to 60 days in a thinking pattern, fighting that story, but to realize, I'm a soul. A thought is a vibration of energy. I'm not that person. It's just that way because this is the way I've been thinking my whole life. I have freedom. I have freedom. So now we have to start writing the new comeback to the story. Okay, I went to the class, and that's when my life came back. I started thinking different. Remember, we can't think the same because our brain will not allow us to come up with a solution. Specifically, our brain, when a person has excessive cortisol, even his brain will not allow him to come up with a solution to his problems. So he's always staying in that mode. So the first thing is acceptance. Whatever happened, it happened for me. I'm not going to hide away from my problems. I'm going to deal with that. I'm not going to avoid life anymore. I'm going to approach life. I'm not going to be the victim. I'm going to become the hero. I'm going to walk into Rosh Hashanah with a crown and saying, Hashem, I had it all wrong. I'm starting to question my thinking. I'm not questioning you anymore. And then you can go to Rosh Hashanah with tremendous momentum instead of begging for a better year with the same mindset. So may Hashem help us that we should have unbelievable Rosh Hashanah and we should crown the King.